Foldable smartphones, are they a fad or on the rise? And can the Google Pixel Fold steal a share of the market? Well, that's going to be a difficult thing to look at. So, looking at some numbers here. So far, the global smartphone share of foldables is only about 1.7% of all global phones. And that's billions, right? I mean, there's tons and tons of phones that are out there. So, when you look at the idea of foldables, like the Pixel Fold, you look at the Z Fold 4, we've got the Z Flip 4, we've got the Motorola Razr Plus that just came out, and they're all fighting to try and get traction to springboard and as these things flourish. But there are, of course, barriers to this. One, a lot of the foldables aren't in the United States. The prices are very high. The cost of admittance is really big. Like, it's super up there. $1,799. This was $1,799. So, yeah, it makes a lot of sense that there aren't a ton of these on the market yet. Of course, there's also things like trust. People worry, will the hardware hold up? Are the screens reliable? And we're coming up on the 5th generation of Samsung foldables. It's the 1st generation when it comes to the Google Pixel Fold here in the United States. Right now, Samsung has over like 70, I think maybe about 80% of the global smartphone share on foldables. They got out in front. They have the big company, all the monies. They make the screens. They make screens for a lot of other companies. They make the foldable display for the Pixel Fold. There's a lot of Samsung parts in the Pixel Fold. So they have an advantage. But competition is key whenever it comes to the development of the marketplace, bringing down prices, giving people options. So I don't think we should discredit something like the Pixel Fold. I'm glad that it exists. I've been enjoying using it. It's a very good foldable smartphone. Is it the best one on the market? Well, that's a discussion to have on another day. And of course, we have like the Fold 5 coming out and some other stuff going on. We've got the OnePlus Foldable coming up. But it's the big bright spot on the horizon, and people wonder if this is going to segue into be like the next thing for smartphones. They're anticipating about, I think, a 55% year-over-year smartphone foldable share increase. So, I mean, not increase, but like increased sales over last year. And that's a good thing. Currently, I think they projected about 20 million smartphone sales, 23 million foldable smartphone sales for 2023. About the same as the iPhone SE 2022 still. So we're still kind of in the infantile stages here, but I think that Google might be in a good position to try and take advantage of some of this because a lot of folks don't like when there's only one option. We in the United States don't like monopolies. I mean, the government broke up Microsoft into different groups for a reason, right? They had a monopoly over everything. So I think it's good that Google put the money in, they put the time in, and this phone finally came out. And I think it's really important that it's fundamentally different. If it looked exactly the same, if it functioned exactly the same, then folks would go, well, if it's emulating this, then why not just buy this? This is the gold standard. Why do you want the silver standard? So I think it was really important that Google went out and they did something different, and they gave us this wider display that we have and this shorter, wider screen on the front. One of the biggest complaints about the Z Fold 4, the Z Fold 3, the 2, the 1, is the front screen is very narrow, and Google fixed that very handily with this screen. Now it's listening to me talk. But I think they did a good job with the design on this. It also looks very premium. And I talked about this in my last video. They did a great job with the design on this. It stands out. It's very fundamentally Google. You can see the camera bar on the back. It emulates what you get with the Pixel 7, with the Pixel 6 phones. And then, of course, you have the reverse structure set up for the power button and the volume rocker, which I hate, but it's their thing. So, I mean, I can't really criticize them for that. But as a person who goes back and forth between smartphones all the time, and they're all different, and most of them are kind of single stacks with the power button on the bottom, volume rocker on the top, it does throw me off a little bit. But here we are in 2023 now, and I think Google has been trying to execute this underlying hardware ecosphere setup for a long time. First, it was the phone, and we got the watch, we got the new phones, we got the tablet, we've got the foldable phone now. So they're well on their way to trying to build up this mobile ecosphere platform to try and compete with the likes of Samsung, but in their own way. Because when you take a look at like the Pixel tablet, it's fundamentally different than what you get with like the Samsung Galaxy tablet, right? So it stands out, it's different, it plays into some of Google's strengths, and of course, one of those is AI. And I was actually reading a really interesting article today where they're talking about, it looks like Google might actually move, or TSMC or TMSC, I can't remember what the acronym is, but the people that make like the good chips, right? They're the ones that Qualcomm works with, and they make the best chips. So if we could get away from Samsung and their Exynos process and move over to TMSC, or TSMC. I'm drawing a blank. I think it's TMSC. And those guys, they make really good chips. And maybe that's something that we could alleviate some of these hardware inconsistencies, some of the heat issues, some of the standby issues. You get the picture. But still designed by Google. So Google's done a lot of great things with AI. They've done a lot of great with onboard integration of stuff they used to do. It's interesting because a lot of folks don't know that the Tensor chip, they actually had Tensor servers. And used to be, remember a couple of years ago with voice dictation or whenever you would do like speech to text, you would have to have the internet because it would rely on these servers to process the information, so it would bounce back and forth, just like probably what we still get with Apple and other ones. Like it really slowly shows up, or if you don't have an internet connection or a bad internet connection, it doesn't work very well. So that's something that's done on board with the Tensor. A lot of people look at the Tensor chip and they go, oh, it's not as powerful, it's not as high speed, it doesn't have the ultimate gigahertz, right? But here's something a lot of folks don't know. When you take a look at a Qualcomm chip that's in many of these Snapdragon phones, like the Snapdragon chipset in these phones, they have a structure. They're all 8-core processors, but they have one primary core that's the high-powered one. So in the instance of the S23 Ultra, which I have right here, the one that's Qualcomm for Snapdragon for Samsung, clocked at 3.36 gigahertz. Well, if you take a look at the Tensor, it's I think about 2.86, but it has two of them. So instead of having like one V8 engine, it basically has two. Or I think better way to analogize this is if you look at the Teslas, if you understand how they work, it's like a motor attached to it like the wheel. It doesn't have a big engine, and you can get a dual motor model, right? So well, if you have two motors, it can do a lot more work without having to put as much strain on it. It doesn't require as much high-speed power. It just fundamentally works different. Two brains are better than one. That's why we came up with multi-core processors in the first place. So one high-powered core, two high-powered cores, and it's something that's very, very unique to Google and how they do business. So there's a lot of stuff that I think Google will start to elevate and play to their strengths as we move forward into it. And this foldable was part of that decision. It's like they've got the Tensor 2 in all their hardware. So you have basically, it's kind of like Apple, except it's not quite there yet. Like we still, I think, have a couple more years to go before we get to, I think, the vision of what we expected from Google in their silicon department when it comes to the Tensor chipset. Like by the time we get to the Tensor 4, Tensor 5, I think a lot of people will look at it as a brand name and go, wow, you can get some really good things out of that. But it's interesting how they've inserted this into all their hardware. You look at the Pixel 7, the 7a, the 7 Pro, you look at the Pixel tablet, you look at the Pixel Fold, they all have the same Tensor chip in it. And yes, you can argue with me in the comments about how the one has a different composition for the core for the Tensor G2 in the Pixel 7a. Look, it's still a Tensor 2, right? We're just going to blanket call it. There's not a whole lot of difference there. Might be slightly lesser quality, but ultimately it's a Tensor 2. And then next year, we're going to have the Tensor 3. Well, actually, we're going to have it already this year because it's going to go into the Pixel 8 and the 8 Pro. So there's a lot of excitement for the brand. And I think part of that has to do with this because people look at it and they go, wow, Google's in the foldable space. It's not just Samsung anymore. You can get it from T-Mobile. You can get it from AT&T. You can get it from different carriers. Of course, a lot of them are still in the pre-order stage. They're not available yet. But this is something where I think they're kind of doing it in a smart way. They're not investing too much in case it doesn't do well, but at the same time, they're making it available, having some trade-in offers, working with carriers. And I think there's a chance that it can get some of that market share because when there's only one option, of course, that's what you're going to buy. That's been the default, the de facto Samsung Galaxy Z Flip and Z Fold series. But now we have the Pixel Fold. And I think it brings some excellent things to the table that people will really appreciate. Is it a first generation product? Very much so it is. And there's some things that show in that, but it's very promising for a first generation product. I think it's a better first generation product, of course, than what we got with the original Galaxy Fold. And of course, over time, software optimization, things like that. Android 14 is just around the corner. I think there's some good things ahead for the Google brand and also the Pixel Fold. And hopefully, I think it'll be able to capture maybe a little bit. Now, of course, the actual Google smartphone share in the world is significantly less than Samsung, but they're working on it. And, well, they're doing okay in some regard. I mean, there's a setback here and there. There's some frustrations here and there. But by and large, they're moving the goalposts. So I know running is not always as flashy as throwing it, the quarterback chucking a Hail Mary down and getting a touchdown and having this spectacular play, but the run game sets up the long game. So especially look at like play action. Maybe you need to run before you pass. And, well, we're fixing to be on the third generation of Tensor products. Maybe that's finally where it opens up the field a little bit so we can get some more points. So that's kind of my analysis on this. I think there's still a lot of open area when it comes to the foldable market just because of the fact that it's been so limited, especially in the US and globally in some areas by Samsung. And now we have Google here. And especially as I think we'll probably get some price drops over this over the later part of the year. And if you take a look at what we've had with the Pixel hardware over the last year or two, the prices don't hold up very well. They drop and then they drop and then they have sales. And Google's done something that I said they needed to do for a long time and be more aggressive with their marketing and their product placement and trying to get these in people's pockets. So we'll see if they stick to that throughout the rest of this year. We'll keep an eye on it this fall, of course, when the more foldables are available. I'm looking forward to the OnePlus foldable. I'm looking forward to the Z Fold 5. I've used my Z Fold 4 extensively every single day for basically the last year since the sucker came out. So I think there's a place for them. I don't think they're replacing the iPhone. I don't think they're replacing the S series phones from Samsung anytime soon, but they're making a better case for themselves every generation, every one that comes out. And I think Google's onto something here with this phone. So that's all I've got. Let me know what you think. Are you interested in foldables? Do you think there's a place for them? Do you think that it's a fad that's going to die out? These are all things we talk about all the time. So let's go to the comments and talk about it. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, please hit the like and the subscribe button and the little notification bell if you want updates when new videos come out. And as always, thanks for being here. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you guys next time.